At a wedding we attended, my husband spent the entire evening glued to his female coworker, dancing and laughing while barely noticing me. When someone asked if he was married, he casually replied, "Not really. It doesn't count when she's not interesting." The laughter filled the room. I stood there frozen. The next morning he woke up alone and I realized my worth. "Is he married?" the woman asked, loud enough for half the wedding reception to hear. I watched Asher glance at me, his wife of 4 years, then turn back to the stranger with that easy smile. "Not really. It doesn't count when she's not interesting." The words hung in the air while Joyce laughed beside him, her hand on his arm. I sat there, champagne glass frozen halfway to my lips, as the entire table erupted in laughter. That was 3 hours ago. Now I stood in our Beacon Hill apartment at 5:30 a.m., making his favorite breakfast, replaying those words while deciding exactly how interesting my revenge would be. Before we continue, if you've ever been dismissed as boring or not interesting by someone who should value you, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more people who need to hear this. Now let's see what Willow does next. The eggs sizzled in the pan, perfect whites with no crispy edges, just how Asher demanded them. My hands moved automatically through the routine I'd perfected over 4 years. Mash the avocado with exactly half a lime, a quarter teaspoon of salt. Spread it on whole grain toast at that specific golden brown shade. 1 coffee, dark roast, single sugar oat milk. The same breakfast I'd made yesterday and the day before, and every day since we'd moved into this overpriced apartment that he insisted we needed for his image. His first alarm went off at 6:15. Then 6:20. Then 6:25. I listened to him groan and hit snooze again, knowing he'd blame me later for not waking him up properly. Through the thin walls of our apartment, I heard our neighbor's TV already blaring the morning news. Something about the stock market. Asher would want to know the numbers, would pretend to understand them over breakfast while texting Joyce about their morning meeting. I found myself staring at the receipt that had fallen from his jacket pocket yesterday. 2 lattes from the expensive place on Newberry Street, time-stamped 3:47 p.m. When did 1 coffee become 2? When did grabbing coffee with a colleague become a daily ritual that didn't include me? I tucked the receipt back where I'd found it. Let him think I was still the oblivious wife who never checked pockets, never questioned late nights, never wondered why Joyce's name lit up his phone more than mine did. At 6:45, Asher finally stumbled into the kitchen, hair sticking up at odd angles, already scrolling through his phone. No good morning. No kiss. Just a grunt of acknowledgement as he sat at our small dining table, thumb moving rapidly across his screen. "Joyce needs me to review her presentation before the morning meeting," he announced, not looking up. "Might be late tonight too. The Morrison Project is heating up." The Morrison Project. Everything was the Morrison Project these days. I set his plate in front of him, watching as he took a bite without tasting it, eyes still glued to his phone. A notification popped up, Joyce's face in a tiny circle, smiling. He actually smiled back at the screen, a genuine warm expression I hadn't seen directed at me in months. "I have that wedding tonight," I reminded him. "The Blackwood wedding. You promised you'd come." "What?" He finally looked up, confused as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. "Oh, right. Yeah, of course. What time?" 6. The invitation's been on the refrigerator for 3 months. He was already back to his phone. "Joyce might come too. She knows the Blackwoods through some charity thing." "That okay?" I watched him eat mechanically, responding to Joyce's messages between bites. Was it okay? Did it matter what I said? Joyce would show up regardless, in something tight and expensive, and Asher would light up like a Christmas tree the moment she walked in. Just like at his company holiday party. Just like at every team dinner, that somehow never included spouses anymore. "Sure," I said, turning back to the sink. "The more the merrier." At 7:15 he rushed out, leaving his half-eaten breakfast and dirty coffee mug on the table. "Late for Joyce's presentation," he called over his shoulder. Not goodbye. Not, "I love you." Not even thanks for breakfast. Just Joyce. Always Joyce. I cleared his dishes, then sat at the table with my own coffee, opening my laptop. My Brookline Academy email showed 17 new messages. Parents wanting conferences, students submitting late essays, administrative reminders about standardized testing. My real life. The one where I was Miss Willow, respected and competent, where 7th graders actually listened when I spoke and parents thanked me for helping their children understand Shakespeare. At noon, I'd stand in front of my English class, discussing The Great Gatsby with 27 13-year-olds who thought they understood everything about love and betrayal. Emma Martinez, my brightest student, would inevitably ask one of her penetrating questions that cut straight through to uncomfortable truths. Last week she'd asked if Daisy ever really loved Tom or if she just loved what he represented. I'd deflected with literary analysis, but the question haunted me. Later, I'd drive to Newton for my secret tutoring session with the Morrison twins. Yes, those Morrisons whose father's project was supposedly keeping Asher and Joyce so busy. Their mother paid me $300 in cash per session, money I tucked away in an account Asher didn't know existed. I told her I was saving for a surprise anniversary trip. Really, I was building something else entirely. An escape fund, an independence fund, a just-in-case fund that grew larger every week. The apartment felt smaller this morning, suffocating. The exposed brick wall that had seemed charming when we'd moved in now looked like a prison wall. The designer furniture Asher had insisted on buying felt like props in someone else's life. Even the morning light streaming through our bay windows seemed false, too bright, illuminating a life that looked perfect from the outside but was rotting from within. I picked up my phone, scrolling through Asher's Instagram. There she was, Joyce, in a team photo from yesterday's lunch. Joyce, laughing at someone's birthday celebration I hadn't known about. Joyce, standing next to my husband at a conference I thought he'd attended alone. Joyce. The woman who'd somehow become more present in my marriage than I was. Tonight would be different, though. Tonight, at the Blackwood wedding, surrounded by people who knew us as a couple, Asher would have to acknowledge me. He'd have to introduce me as his wife, sit next to me at dinner, maybe even dance with me if I was lucky. For a few hours, I'd exist in his world as more than the boring woman who made his breakfast and paid half his rent. I closed the laptop and headed to the bedroom to choose my outfit for the wedding. The black cocktail dress hanging in the closet would do. Simple, elegant, appropriate. Asher would glance at it later and say fine without really looking, the way he said everything these days. Fine. Adequate. Boring. But as I stood there, running my fingers along the fabric, those words from 3 hours in the future echoed backward through time. It doesn't count when she's not interesting. The valet took forever to bring our car around, and Asher checked his phone every 30 seconds, his jaw tightening with each passing moment. The Blackwood wedding venue loomed before us. A converted mansion with marble columns that stretched 3 stories high, lit from below with soft golden lights that made the whole building glow against the evening sky. Joyce just texted. She's already inside, Asher said, practically bouncing on his heels. We need to hurry. I adjusted my black dress one more time, the fabric suddenly feeling cheaper than it had in our bedroom. Other couples were arriving, the wives in jewel-toned gowns that caught the light, their husbands offering arms as they navigated the stone steps in heels. Asher was already walking ahead, his phone still in his hand. The ballroom doors opened to reveal a sea of round tables draped in ivory cloth, centerpieces dripping with white orchids and roses. A string quartet played something classical in the corner, the kind of music that made everyone lower their voices and feel more sophisticated. I spotted familiar faces from Asher's office, from my college days, from the neighborhood. Everyone looked polished, happy, coupled. Willow. Oh my God, finally. Sarah's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. My college roommate appeared in emerald green silk, her husband David trailing behind with 2 champagne flutes. She pulled me into a hug that lasted a beat too long, pulling back to study my face with the kind of concern that meant my concealer wasn't doing its job. You look tired, honey, she whispered, her hand still on my arm. Everything okay? Before I could answer, Asher was already scanning the room over my shoulder, his body angled away from our conversation. Sarah followed my gaze, watching my husband search the crowd with the intensity of someone looking for lost luggage at an airport. She's over by the bar, David offered helpfully, not realizing the weight of his words. Joyce, right? From your office? She was asking about you earlier, Asher. The transformation was instant. Asher's face lit up, his shoulders straightened, and suddenly he looked like the man I'd married. Animated, engaged, present. Except none of that energy was directed at me. I'll be right back, he said, already moving. Just need to say hello. Sarah and I watched him weave through the crowd, navigating tables and clusters of guests with purpose. David excused himself to find their seats, leaving Sarah and me standing there like abandoned lighthouses. "How long has that been going on?" Sarah asked quietly. "What do you mean?" The lie came automatically even though we both knew better. She didn't push. Instead, she linked her arm through mine and guided me toward the bar, chattering about her kids, her new job, anything except the obvious. But I wasn't listening. I was watching Asher reach Joyce. The crimson dress should have looked garish in a sea of pastels and navy, but on Joyce, it looked like confidence. Like power. Like everything I wasn't. Her blonde hair fell in waves that probably cost more than my entire outfit. When Asher approached, she turned toward him like a flower finding sun, her whole body lighting up with recognition. I watched him help her with her wrap, a delicate silver thing that had slipped from her shoulders. His hands lingered there, adjusting fabric that didn't need adjusting, while she tilted her head back and laughed at something he said. The sound carried across the ballroom, bright and tinkling, drawing glances from other guests. "Their inside joke from yesterday's meeting," I heard Joyce say as Sarah and I got closer. "You should have seen Peterson's face when you said that thing about the quarterly projections." The thing about the quarterly projections. They had things. Inside jokes. Yesterday's meeting that probably extended into yesterday's dinner and yesterday's drinks. Sarah's hand found mine and squeezed. She understood without words the way good friends do. We found our table, number 12, tucked in a corner with a partially obstructed view of the dance floor. Asher's place card sat next to mine, but his chair remained empty through the salad course, the speeches, the first dance. When the DJ invited all guests to join the happy couple on the dance floor, Asher materialized with Joyce in tow. "They're playing our song," she exclaimed, and I wondered when they'd developed a song. "Remember? From the Morrison celebration dinner. The Morrison account. Everything always came back to the Morrison account." "Just one dance," Asher said, not really asking, already leading Joyce away. "You don't mind, right, Willow?" Did I mind? The question hung there for half a second before they were gone, swept into the crowd of dancing couples. I watched them move together with an ease that spoke of practice. His hand knew exactly where to rest on her waist. She knew exactly how to tilt her head to maintain eye contact while they turned. One dance became two when the DJ transitioned seamlessly into another slow song. Two became three when Joyce requested something specific, batting her eyelashes at the DJ like they were old friends. By the fourth song, other guests had started to notice. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Eyes tracked their movement around the floor. The mother of the bride, Mrs. Blackwood herself, caught my eye from across the room and offered a sympathetic smile that felt worse than outright pity. By the fifth dance, I'd given up pretending to check my phone and simply sat there, champagne untouched, watching my husband dance with another woman while everyone watched me watching them. Sarah had tried to make conversation, but even she'd run out of small talk. That's when Margaret Blackwood descended on our table like a perfumed vulture in St. John knit. "Darling." She settled into Asher's empty chair with the authority of someone who owned every room she entered. "I don't think we've properly met. I'm Margaret, Susan's mother. And you are?" "Willow Richardson," I managed. "I went to school with Rebecca." "Oh, how lovely." Her voice carried the way voices do when they're meant to be overheard. "And that handsome man dancing with the blonde, is he with you?" I felt the blood drain from my face. Sarah started to interject, but Margaret waved her off. "Such a beautiful couple they make," Margaret continued, loud enough that the table next to us turned to look. "The way they move together. Like they've been dancing for years." "Is he married, dear?" The question hung in the air like a sword waiting to drop. I could see Asher and Joyce returning to the table, both flushed from dancing, Joyce's hand possessively on his arm. They were laughing about something, heads bent together, completely oblivious to the small audience that had gathered around our conversation. "Well," Margaret pressed, her voice now carrying to 3 tables over. "Is your handsome friend married?" Asher heard her. I saw the moment the question registered, watched him process it, watched him glance at me. His wife of 4 years, the woman who'd supported him through business school, who'd moved to Boston for his career, who'd spent countless nights alone while he worked late with Joyce. He smiled. That easy, charming smile that had made me fall in love with him at a coffee shop 6 years ago. "Not really," he said, his voice carrying across our corner of the ballroom. It doesn't count when she's not interesting. The laughter erupted immediately. Joyce giggled behind her manicured fingers. Margaret Blackwood practically shrieked with delight. The couple at the next table exchanged knowing looks. Even the waiter refilling water glasses smirked. I stood slowly, my movements deliberate and controlled. The champagne glass made a soft clink as I set it on the table. Every eye in our section was on me now, waiting for tears, for drama, for the boring wife to finally provide some entertainment. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady as granite. "I need some air." Joyce's voice followed me as I walked away. "Was it something I said?" "Don't worry about it," Asher replied, loud enough for me to hear. "She's always dramatic at events." The bathroom was mercifully empty. I locked myself in the farthest stall and stood there, breathing slowly through my nose. No tears came. My hands weren't shaking. Instead, there was this strange calm settling over me, like watching storm clouds clear after years of rain. I emerged and faced myself in the gilt-framed mirror. My mascara hadn't run. My lipstick was still perfect. I looked exactly like the woman who'd walked into this wedding 3 hours ago, hoping her husband might remember she existed. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. A door had closed. A decision had crystallized. I walked back through the ballroom without stopping at our table. Asher was back on the dance floor with Joyce, both of them laughing at something the DJ had said. Sarah caught my eye, started to stand, but I shook my head slightly. This wasn't her problem to fix. The valet seemed surprised to see me alone. "Leaving already, ma'am?" "Yes." I handed him the ticket. "Just me." The drive home should have taken 20 minutes. I made it last an hour, winding through Cambridge's quiet streets, windows down despite the sharp March cold. The air bit at my cheeks, made my eyes water in a way that had nothing to do with crying. At a red light on Massachusetts Avenue, I remembered the acceptance letter from Harvard's PhD program in comparative literature. I'd been 26, eager, brilliant according to my professors. But Asher had just gotten into Sloan for his MBA, and we couldn't afford both programs. "Your career is more flexible," he'd said. "You can go back to school anytime." That was 5 years ago. The promotion at Wellington Prep that I'd turned down because it would mean evening classes, weekend grading, less time to support Asher's networking events. The head of the department had been shocked. "This opportunity won't come again, Willow." But Asher needed me available, needed the stable income while he established himself. The fertility specialist appointments I'd canceled last year. 3 months of tests and procedures, then Asher's sudden announcement that he wasn't ready, might never be ready, and shouldn't I focus on being happy with what we had? I'd thrown away the medication, deleted the doctor's number, pretended my body hadn't been preparing for something that would never come. By the time I reached our apartment building, the strange calm had transformed into something harder, colder. Purpose maybe. Or just the absence of hope finally bringing clarity. Our apartment was dark, silent, waiting. I moved through it like a ghost with an agenda. In the bedroom, I pulled my overnight bag from the closet, the one I'd bought for a weekend trip we never took. My grandmother's pearl necklace went in first, wrapped in tissue paper. Then her matching earrings, the engagement ring she'd worn for 60 years before leaving it to me. From the living room cabinet, I carefully removed the china she'd also left me, 12 place settings of Spode that Asher had wanted to sell because, who needs fancy plates? Each piece went into bubble wrap I'd saved from Amazon deliveries. These plates had survived the Depression, 2 wars, 3 moves across the country. They weren't staying here to watch my marriage die. My laptop was next. I sat at the kitchen table and systematically downloaded 3 years of financial records. Our joint checking account, the credit cards, his spending patterns. The restaurant charges at places I'd never been. Hotel rooms in the city when he was supposedly at conferences. $3,200 at Tiffany's last month that had produced no blue box for me. I photographed everything. Every receipt, every statement, every lie translated into digital evidence. The tutoring money I'd hidden wasn't in our regular bank. For 3 years I'd been depositing cash into an account at a completely different institution. $27,000 from teaching entitled teenagers how to game the SAT system while their parents believed I was becoming a more centered person through yoga. The teaching awards from Brookline Academy went into a box. Excellence in Education 2019. Most Dedicated Teacher 2020. Innovation in Literature Curriculum 2021. Asher had never attended the ceremonies. School stuff, he'd called them like I was a child showing off a finger painting. At exactly 11 p.m. I sat at our kitchen table with his keychain. The apartment key slid off first, then the mailbox key, the gym locker key, the spare to his parents' house in Wellesley. I kept removing them until only his car key remained, alone on the ring like a question mark. His laptop was password protected, but I knew all his passwords. He used the same 3 in rotation had since college. I logged into our Netflix account and changed the password. Then Hulu, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, the grocery delivery service, the meal kit subscription he'd insisted we needed. Every shared digital space we'd created, I locked him out of systematically, methodically. His LinkedIn profile was the masterpiece. I didn't delete it or write anything crude. Just a simple update to his current position. Currently exploring new opportunities after personal conflicts with colleague-affected team dynamics. Vague enough to be professional. Specific enough to raise red flags with any recruiter who bothered to check. I found the business card Marcus had given me at last year's holiday party. Joyce's fiancé, deployed for 6 months, completely unaware his future wife was playing office romance with my husband. I uploaded the photos I'd taken tonight. Asher's hand on Joyce's waist, her head thrown back in laughter, the two of them closer than colleagues should ever be. I typed a simple subject line. Thought you should see what Joyce was up to at the Blackwood wedding. My wedding ring came off easier than I'd expected. 4 years of wearing it and it slid off like it had never belonged there. I placed it on Asher's pillow with a note. You're right. It didn't count. Not interesting enough to fight for someone who was never really mine. By 11:47 p.m., I was pulling into my sister Grace's driveway in Burlington, Vermont, the overnight bag and boxes of china secure in my trunk. Her porch light was on. She'd been waiting since my text 3 hours earlier, coming to stay. We'll explain. No questions, no demands for details. Just, drive safe. Guest rooms ready. The wine was already breathing on her kitchen counter when I walked in. Grace took one look at my face and poured generous glasses without speaking. We sat at her farmhouse table, the one she'd rescued from an estate sale and spent months refinishing, and I finally let myself exhale. He said I wasn't interesting, I told her. At a wedding. To everyone. Grace's knuckles went white around her wine glass, but she just nodded. She'd never liked Asher, had called him aggressively mediocre, after meeting him the first time. I should have listened. I turned my phone off completely and slept like the dead in her guest room, surrounded by the quilts she made during her craft phase and the smell of lavender from her garden. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't dream about anything. The assault began at exactly 7:03 a.m. Grace knocked gently, holding my phone. It's been ringing nonstop since 6:30. 27 calls from the same number. Not Asher's number, though. I took the phone, saw the unfamiliar Boston number and knew immediately. He was calling from the apartment lobby. The keypad phone. Because he couldn't get in. I powered it on and the screen exploded with notifications. 43 missed calls. 19 voicemails. 67 text messages. The first voicemail was timestamped at 6:31 a.m. Willow, what the hell did you do to the locks? This isn't funny. I'm locked out of my own apartment. His voice was more confused than angry. Still in denial. The second at 6:45. Seriously, this is ridiculous. I have a meeting at 8. Fix the locks now. By 6:52, panic had crept in. My credit card just got declined at Starbucks. What's going on? Did you cancel my cards? At 7:01, full rage. You're insane. You can't just lock me out and steal my money. This is illegal. I'm calling the police. I'm calling a lawyer. You're going to regret this, Willow. You vindictive crazy. I deleted the rest without listening. Grace sat beside me reading the text messages over my shoulder. Most were variations of the same theme. Demands. Threats. Then buried among them one from an unknown number. This is Joyce. I don't know what you told Marcus, but you've ruined everything. I hope you're happy. Marcus is her fiancé, I explained to Grace. Army. Deployed. I sent him photos from last night. Grace actually laughed. You sent evidence to the other woman's military boyfriend? Willow, I didn't know you had it in you. My phone rang. Asher again from the lobby phone. This time I answered. Finally. Willow, what is wrong with you? Open the door right now. Good morning to you too. I took a sip of the coffee Grace had made. Strong with real cream from the dairy down the road. Don't you dare. Where are you? Why aren't you here? The locks don't work. I removed your access. You'll need to make other arrangements. Other arrangements? This is my apartment. Actually, it's Mr. Kowalski's apartment. And as of this morning, you're no longer on the lease. Silence. I could hear his breathing, rapid and shallow. You can't do that. Already done. Check your email. 30 days notice to vacate. Mr. Kowalski was very understanding when I explained the situation. What situation? What did you tell him? The truth. That my husband publicly announced our marriage doesn't count because I'm not interesting enough. He seemed to think that was grounds for lease modification. That was a joke. I was drinking. Joyce thought it was funny. Is Joyce taking your calls this morning? Another pause. She's dealing with something. Marcus. How do you sent those photos to Marcus? He's deployed. He's serving our country and you. He's serving our country while his fiancée plays footsie with married men. He deserved to know. You've ruined everything. My reputation, my job. Interesting people handle their own problems, Asher. I have to go. My sister's making breakfast. Willow, wait. I hung up and blocked the lobby phone number. Then I called Mr. Kowalski myself. Miss Willow. His Polish accent was thick with sympathy. I sent email like you asked. 30 days he's out. You want I should change locks anyway? That won't be necessary. The digital locks are already updated. Good. You know, my wife, she never liked him. Said he had eyes like snake. Wandering eyes. By 9 a.m. my phone was buzzing with a different kind of call. Sarah, breathless with gossip. Willow, you're not going to believe this. David just told me he works in HR, remember? Joyce has done this before. 3 times. At her last firm, she caused a whole sexual harassment lawsuit between 2 married executives who were fighting over her. The firm transferred her to Boston to avoid the scandal. I sat up straighter. She's done this before? It's like her thing. She targets married men in positions of power, creates these emotional affairs, then plays victim when things explode. David says there was already paperwork started to transfer her to Denver because someone filed a complaint last month. Not about Asher. About her behavior with a different married manager. Asher was just another target? The easiest one probably. David says everyone at the office knew about them. The late meetings, the lunches, the constant texting. Joyce apparently told people you were separated, that the marriage was already over. We weren't separated. I made him breakfast yesterday morning. I know, honey. I know. But here's the best part. Marcus showed up at their office an hour ago. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. What? He got emergency leave. Flew back from Germany overnight. Walked into the downtown offices with a stack of printed emails and photos. David says security had to escort Asher out because Marcus was ready to, well, you know. Military guys don't play around. Is Asher okay? Why do you care? But yes, he's fine. Humiliated but fine. Joyce, though, she completely threw him under the bus. Told everyone that Asher had been pursuing her aggressively, that she tried to maintain professional boundaries, that she felt pressured because he was senior to her. Actually laughed. She's claiming he harassed her? Full victim mode. HR is launching an investigation. Asher's been suspended pending review. And Joyce? She's already packing for Denver. Turns out that transfer paperwork just needs a signature. I thought about Asher standing in our apartment lobby this morning, locked out of the life he'd taken for granted. His credit cards dead, his reputation crumbling, his side piece abandoning him to save herself. The boring wife he'd dismissed had dismantled his entire existence in less than 12 hours. Willow, you still there? Yeah, I'm here. How do you feel? I considered the question. How did I feel? Vindicated? Satisfied? Empty? Interesting, I said finally. I feel interesting. Sarah hung up after promising to keep me updated on the office drama, and I sat in Grace's kitchen, feeling oddly hollow despite the vindication. Grace was at work. She taught yoga at a studio downtown, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the incessant buzzing of my phone. Barbara Richardson's name flashed on the screen. Asher's mother. I'd been expecting this call since approximately 30 seconds after Asher discovered he was locked out. I let it ring through to voicemail twice before finally answering on her third attempt. Willow. Her voice was thick with tears, dramatic in that special way only Barbara could manage. What have you done to my poor boy? Hello, Barbara. He's homeless. Jobless. He called me from some stranger's phone because his own phone is dead. He spent the night in his car. In his car, Willow. He has a car. That's more than some people have. How can you be so cruel? After everything we've done for you, welcoming you into our family. Barbara, your son told a room full of people that our marriage doesn't count because I'm not interesting enough. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, calculating her next move. Men say things they don't mean when they're drinking. Richard once told me I looked like his mother in a certain dress. Did I lock him out of the house? No. Because marriage is about forgiveness. Richard. Asher's father, who'd had 3 affairs that Barbara knew about and still pretended didn't happen. The Richardson family motto should have been accountability is optional. He wasn't drunk, Barbara. He meant every word. You're throwing away 4 years over one comment? That's childish, Willow. Marriages have ups and downs. You work through them. Like you worked through Richard's secretary? Or the tennis instructor? Or that woman from his book club? Silence. Then, how dare you? I dare because I'm done pretending dysfunction is normal. Asher learned from the best, didn't he? That wives should just accept whatever scraps of respect their husbands throw them. She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, my own parents called. I'd been dreading this more than Barbara's theatrics. Mom's contact photo, us at last Christmas both smiling, made my stomach twist. Sweetheart, Mom began, her voice carefully neutral. Asher called us. Of course he did. He explained about the misunderstanding at the wedding. Misunderstanding? He publicly declared I wasn't interesting enough to count as his wife. Dad's voice joined the call. He must have been on speaker. Willow, honey, men sometimes say foolish things. But you have to ask yourself, did you try hard enough to keep his interest? The words hit like ice water. Excuse me. Well, Dad continued, oblivious to the damage he was causing, relationships require effort from both sides. Maybe you got too comfortable. Stopped making an effort. When's the last time you surprised him? Dressed up for him? I made him breakfast every morning at 5:30 a.m. I supported him through business school. I gave up my PhD for his career. But did you stay interesting? Dad pressed. Men need excitement, challenge. Maybe this Joyce woman just offered something you didn't. Mom chimed in. Have you considered couples therapy? Dr. Brennan, you remember her from church? She saved the Miller's marriage after his affair. This isn't about saving anything, I said, my voice flat. It's over. Don't be rash, Mom said. You're emotional. Take some time. Think about your future. You're 32, Willow. Starting over at your age, it's not easy. Better than staying with someone who publicly humiliates me. Is it? Dad asked. Better than working on your marriage? Better than admitting maybe you both made mistakes? I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from sadness but from rage. My own parents, the people who raised me, thought I should have tried harder to be interesting for a man who was emotionally cheating with his coworker. Grace walked in during my 3rd glass of wine that afternoon, took one look at my face and said, Parents. They think I should have tried harder to keep his interest. She snorted, pulling food from a grocery bag. Remember when I caught him at your wedding? I looked up. What? I never told you. Kept the peace, you know. But at your wedding, your actual wedding, I saw him cornering my friend Melissa by the bathroom. Hand on the wall beside her head, leaning in close, telling her she had beautiful eyes. My wine glass stopped halfway to my mouth. At our wedding? I told him to back off. He laughed, said he was just being friendly. But Melissa was uncomfortable. She left early because of it. You never said anything. Grace sat down across from me, her face serious. Would you have believed me? You were so happy. So sure he was the one. And I thought, maybe it was just wedding champagne. Maybe I misread it. I didn't want to ruin your day with suspicions. For years, I whispered. 4 years of signs I ignored. My phone buzzed. An email from Asher, the subject line, please read important. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Willow, I know you're angry. But what you're doing is destructive and unnecessary. Joyce meant nothing. She was just a friend who understood my work stress. You were always so focused on your teaching your students. You didn't understand the pressure I was under. I said something stupid at the wedding, yes, but haven't you ever said something you didn't mean? We have 4 years of history. An apartment. A life. Don't throw it away because you're hurt. I'm willing to forgive you for the locks, the money, the humiliation at my office. We can start fresh. But you need to stop this vindictive behavior now. Asher. I read it twice, marveling at the mental gymnastics required to make himself the victim. He was willing to forgive me. For responding to his public humiliation. The delusion was almost impressive. That evening, a notification from our bank made my blood run cold. Large withdrawal from joint savings. I logged in immediately. $3,000 transferred out this morning. Then another $2,000 this afternoon. He was draining what was left before I could stop him. I called the bank, but they explained that as a joint account holder he had every right to withdraw funds. Unless I could prove fraud, which I couldn't, the money was gone. I pulled up 3 months of statements, really studying them for the first time. Charges at hotels in Boston during conferences that were supposedly in other cities. Restaurant bills for always two at places I'd never been. Theater tickets, concert tickets. Even a wine-tasting weekend in the Berkshires last month when he'd said he was visiting his brother. I screenshot every suspicious charge, every hotel receipt, every dinner for 2 that I'd never attended. The Berkshires trip hurt the most. I'd spent that weekend helping my teacher friend prepare her classroom for the new school year while Asher was supposedly bonding with his brother in Connecticut. The evidence file on my laptop grew thicker with each discovered lie. My phone rang just as I finished documenting the last 3 months. Unknown Boston number. Hello. Mrs. Richardson? This is Margaret Blackwood. The wedding gossip queen. I braced myself for another round of humiliation. Margaret. Dear, I owe you an apology. Her voice was different. Softer, without its usual theatrical edge. What happened at Susan's wedding was unconscionable. I provoked that situation and I'm deeply sorry. I didn't know what to say. Margaret Blackwood had never apologized for anything in her life. However, she continued, I thought you should know that several guests recorded the incident on their phones. The video is, well, it's making rounds through Boston society. Someone added a caption, how not to treat your wife. Your husband has become quite infamous. The video is circulating like wildfire, dear. The Pemberton's dinner party last night? It was all anyone could discuss. That Joyce woman's reputation is equally destroyed, of course. Pursuing a married man at a wedding? The audacity. She paused, then added quietly, I've been married 43 years, Willow. Richard has his faults, but he's never once failed to claim me as his wife. What your husband did, that wasn't just cruel. It was cowardly. You deserve better, and frankly, I should have said so at the wedding instead of stirring the pot. Thank you, Margaret. I'll keep you informed of any developments. Boston society has a long memory for scandals like this. She hung up, leaving me stunned. Margaret Blackwood, the woman who lived for drama, had just become an ally. The next surprise came an hour later. Another unknown number, this time with a military base prefix. Is this Willow Richardson? Yes. This is Marcus Torres, his former fiancé. My stomach tensed. Marcus. I'm sorry about. Don't apologize. You did me a favor. I'm calling because I think we might be able to help each other. Help each other? I've been going through Joyce's emails. She forwarded a lot of work correspondence to her personal account. There are messages between her and your husband that, well, they're enlightening. They called us convenient. Both of us. Said we were stable but boring and good for their careers. Each word felt like another piece clicking into place. They discussed us? Like we were furniture. Useful but replaceable. There's one thread where your husband promises to recommend Joyce for a senior position once he makes partner. In exchange for her continued attention and discretion. Dated 6 weeks ago. He was trading career advancement for an affair? Looks like it. I'm sending you everything. Use it however you need. And Willow, there's something else. Joyce did this at her previous firm in Chicago. And the one before that in Miami. It's a pattern. She targets married men in leadership positions, creates dependency, then leverages it for career advancement. How did you? I have friends who know how to dig. Military intelligence training comes in handy. I'm meeting with her former victims this week. Building a case. A case. She destroyed our relationships for sport and profit. That has consequences. I'll be in touch. He hung up before I could respond. Within minutes, my email dinged with a zip file labeled Evidence. 23 email threads between Joyce and Asher, each more damaging than the last. The next morning brought another unexpected turn. I arrived at Brookline Academy early, hoping to prep for my classes in peace. Instead, I found the principal, Dr. Martinez, waiting in my classroom with coffee and a gentle smile. Willow, word travels in our community, she began carefully. Several parents have reached out expressing support. They're appalled by what happened. My cheeks burned. The parents know? Margaret Blackwood's granddaughter is in your third period class. Margaret has been vocal about the situation. I wanted to disappear into the floor. However, Dr. Martinez continued, this has led to something positive. 3 families have specifically requested you for private tutoring. The Morgans, the Chens, and the Williamses. All full SAT prep packages. At $300 per hour, that was nearly $10,000 in potential income. Additionally, she pulled out a business card. Andrea Williams is a partner at Williams, Frost & Associates. She asked me to give you this. She's offering pro bono legal services for your divorce proceedings. I took the card, speechless. Her exact words were, women need to support women who know their worth. She also mentioned she'd handled several cases against your husband's firm. Apparently, they have a history of protecting employees who engage in inappropriate conduct. That afternoon, I met Andrea Williams at her office, a sleek space overlooking the harbor. She was everything I wasn't. Tall, commanding, with the kind of presence that made courtrooms quiet down. I've reviewed the preliminary information, she said, spreading documents across her conference table. Your husband made several critical errors. The joint account drainage, the LinkedIn manipulation, the public humiliation, all documented. With the evidence from Marcus Torres and the video from the wedding, we have a solid case for fault-based divorce with significant penalties. I don't want his money. I just want out. Noble but foolish. He's been spending marital assets on his affair. You're entitled to compensation. Let me handle the legal strategy. You focus on rebuilding. That evening, back at what would soon be Asher's former apartment, I decided to grab the last of my things. I still had keys, physical ones he couldn't digitally revoke. The place felt different, smaller somehow, like it had already forgotten me. In the bedroom closet, behind his collection of expensive suits, I noticed a shoebox I'd never seen before. Inside was a leather journal, the kind pretentious people buy to document their important thoughts. I opened it to a random page. Year 3 with W. Maintain status quo until senior partnership. She provides stability, respectability. Parents approve. After promotion, reassess. J shows more promise for long-term advancement. W2 content with teaching. No ambition. 5-year exit strategy on track. My initials reduced to a letter. Our marriage reduced to a business plan. I photographed every page, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest. His own handwriting, his own words, plotting my disposal like I was an outdated laptop. The journal's last entry was dated just 2 weeks ago. W still clueless. Joyce agrees to Denver after my promotion. Fresh start. No dead weight. I closed the journal, placed it back in the shoebox, and took it with me. This was evidence now, not just his private thoughts but a written confession of fraud. Emotional, financial, marital fraud spanning years. Andrea Williams called that evening as I was organizing everything for our legal strategy. The papers are ready, she said, her voice carrying that lawyer's edge that meant business. Process server is scheduled for Sunday, 1 p.m. Your husband's parents' address, correct? Sunday dinner, I confirmed. He never misses it when he needs comfort. Perfect. Nothing like a family audience for accountability. Sunday arrived gray and drizzling, matching the mood perfectly. At 1:07 p.m. my phone rang. Barbara Richardson, right on schedule. You vindictive witch, she screamed before I could say hello. How dare you humiliate him in our home? In front of his father, his brother, the children. Barbara, your son humiliated me in front of hundreds at a wedding. This seems proportionate. He was served divorce papers at our dining table. During grace. Father Murphy was here. Even better than I'd imagined. Public humiliation apparently runs in your family, Barbara. He gave it out, now he's getting it back. You've destroyed him. His career, his future. He destroyed those himself. I just stopped hiding the debris. She hung up on me, but not before I heard Asher yelling in the background about calling his lawyer, about defamation, about destroying me in court. Monday morning, my recruiter friend Diane texted me, "You need to see this." She sent a screenshot from LinkedIn. Someone had captured Asher's profile during the brief window when I'd edited it. Currently exploring new opportunities after personal conflicts with colleague affected team dynamics. The screenshot was circulating through Boston's professional networks with the wedding video attached. The comments were brutal. "This is why we need better HR policies. Imagine destroying your marriage and career for an office affair. My company would never hire someone with this judgment. That poor wife. At least she got out." Diane's next text, "His profile views dropped 90% this week. Recruiters are actively avoiding him. That video plus the LinkedIn edit? He's radioactive. Even his uncle's insurance firm withdrew their offer," she added. "Nobody wants the liability." Wednesday was the mediation meeting. Andrea had prepped me extensively, but nothing could have prepared me for seeing Asher again. He looked smaller somehow, his suit wrinkled, his perfect hair unkempt. Joyce's absence was palpable. She'd refused to attend, claiming she was the victim in all this. His lawyer, a tired-looking man named Gerald, opened with standard demands. "My client seeks a clean division of assets 50-50, and spousal support given Mrs. Richardson's higher earning potential as a teacher with tutoring income." Andrea actually laughed. "Your client wants support? Let's review, shall we?" She spread bank statements across the table with theatrical precision. Mrs. Richardson paid 70% of household expenses during Mr. Richardson's MBA program. 70%. She highlighted line after line with a yellow marker. Rent, utilities, groceries, even his student loan payments. All while maintaining her teaching position and taking on extra tutoring to support them. That was a mutual investment in their future, Gerald started. A future he was planning to abandon. Andrea produced the journal, photocopied and bound like a court document. Page 47, dated 18 months ago. 3 more years until partnership, then exit strategy from W. Page 63. W's stability useful for appearance of settled family man, important for senior partnership. Page 89. Joyce shows more promise for power couple dynamic. Gerald's face paled. Asher's face went red. "That's private." She stole. "Your client documented his intention to commit marital fraud," Andrea continued. "Using his wife for financial and social stability while planning abandonment. Joyce's name appears," she paused for effect, 247 times across these pages. That's roughly once every 3 days for 2 years. "This is ridiculous," Asher exploded. "She contributed nothing. I was building our future while she played with 7th graders. She's bitter because I found someone actually interesting." Mr. Richardson, the mediator, a stern woman named Judge Chin, interrupted. "You've just admitted to the affair on record." Andrea smiled like a shark. "Would you like to discuss the $47,000 in marital assets spent on this interesting woman? Hotels, dinners, jewelry from Tiffany's. That was for clients. Client Joyce Williams? Because these receipts show 2 dinners. Always 2 at restaurants where Mrs. Richardson was never present." Gerald whispered urgently to Asher, but he was beyond listening. "She locked me out. Changed my LinkedIn. Destroyed my reputation." "You destroyed your own reputation," I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was steady, calm. "I just stopped covering for you." Before he could respond, Andrea's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her shark smile widened. Interesting timing. Joyce Williams just released a statement through her company's HR department. She read from her phone, "Mr. Richardson's persistent advances created an uncomfortable work environment. Despite my repeated attempts to maintain professional boundaries, he leveraged his senior position to pursue inappropriate contact. I felt pressured to comply to protect my career." "That's a lie," Asher stood, his chair scraping against the floor. She pursued me. She has emails suggesting otherwise, Andrea continued. Edited of course but compelling. She's claiming harassment, hostile work environment, potential quid pro quo. Your former company is launching a full investigation. Gerald closed his briefcase with the sound of defeat. We need to recess. My client needs to address these new allegations. Of course, Andrea agreed. But our position is clear. Mrs. Richardson keeps all premarital assets, her savings, her earnings. Mr. Richardson keeps his debt, his ruined reputation, and whatever Joyce left him with. As we gathered our things, Asher grabbed my arm. Willow, please. You know me. You know I'm not what she's saying. I looked at him, really looked at him. The golden boy who'd charmed me 6 years ago was gone. In his place stood a desperate man whose carefully constructed life had collapsed in less than 2 weeks. I don't know you at all, I said quietly. I never did. Andrea guided me out while Asher called after me, his voice breaking with panic. The sound followed us down the hallway, echoing off marble walls that had witnessed 1,000 broken marriages but probably few as thoroughly destroyed as ours. Outside the building, Andrea turned to me. Joyce won't stop with that statement. She's going to bury him to save herself. By next week he won't be able to get a job serving coffee in Boston. He was right. 3 days later, the full HR report leaked. Joyce had submitted edited texts, selective emails, even a recorded phone call where Asher's words were cut to sound predatory. His former company issued a statement distancing themselves. His professional networks evaporated overnight. The headline in Boston Business Weekly read, "Former rising star faces multiple investigations." Asher's professional obituary, really. I folded the newspaper and left it on Grace's kitchen table, feeling nothing but a distant kind of relief, like hearing about a storm that passed without touching your house. 6 months had passed since that mediation meeting. The divorce was final. I'd kept my maiden name, Turner, on everything except the official paperwork, so going back to it felt like slipping into comfortable shoes I'd forgotten I owned. Burlington had become home in a way Boston never was. I'd found a small apartment with exposed brick and mountain views, started teaching at a local private school, and built a tutoring practice that actually let me choose my clients. Tuesday mornings I treated myself to coffee at the Ground Up, a cafe where nobody knew my history and the barista just called me the teacher who likes extra foam. That particular Tuesday I was grading essays when a familiar voice made me look up. Willow. Oh my goodness, it is you. Margaret Blackwood stood there in a burgundy wool coat, looking somewhat out of place among the Vermont locals in their fleece and flannel. Margaret. I set down my red pen. What brings you to Burlington? Visiting my sister. She retired here last year. She gestured to the empty chair across from me. Hey, I nodded, curious despite myself. Margaret settled in with her Earl Grey, her eyes bright with that particular gleam that meant fresh gossip. I suppose you haven't heard about developments. I don't really follow Boston news anymore. Oh, but you must hear this. She leaned forward conspiratorially. Asher is living in his childhood bedroom. His parents' house in Wellesley. Barbara tells everyone who'll listen that he's regrouping and considering his options. I took a sip of my latte, waiting. He's working at his uncle's friend's car dealership. Not selling cars, filing paperwork in the back office. Can you imagine? From consulting presentations to filing automotive warranties. That's quite a change, I said neutrally. And he's dating someone new. Barbara describes her as simple but sweet, which in Barbara speak means she's appalled but desperate for him to move on. The girl's 23, works at a nail salon. They met when she did Barbara's manicure. 23. Barely out of college. I felt a flicker of pity for the girl, but not enough to warn her. She'd learn or she wouldn't. Joyce. I asked, more from courtesy than interest. Transferred to Denver, then quietly let go 3 months later. Something about cultural fit issues. Last I heard she was bartending and trying to start a lifestyle blog. Margaret finished her tea and left with air kisses and promises to keep in touch that we both knew were empty. I returned to my essays, red pen moving across pages about Gatsby's green light and what it meant to chase impossible dreams. Thursday afternoon was the Brookline Academy faculty meeting via video call. I'd maintain my position there, teaching remotely 3 days a week. They hadn't wanted to lose me and the arrangement worked perfectly. Before we adjourn, Dr. Martinez announced, I have wonderful news. The board has approved our recommendation. Willow Turner, would you please accept the position of English department head? My colleagues erupted in congratulations over their various screens. It was a position I'd never even considered pursuing when I was managing Asher's ego, making sure I was never too successful, never too visible, never more accomplished than him. I'm honored, I said, meaning it. Thank you. Your innovative curriculum proposals were extraordinary, Dr. Martinez continued. Particularly the cross-disciplinary project with the history department. Brilliant work. Brilliant. Not boring. Not uninteresting. Brilliant. That evening I was making dinner when my phone rang. Unknown number, Boston area code. I almost didn't answer, then curiosity won. Is this Willow? Willow Turner. Yes. This is Jake Morrison. I was Asher's roommate at Dartmouth. My hand tightened on the phone. Jake. I owe you an apology. A massive one. I should have warned you years ago. Warned me. About Asher. About how he talked about you. Jake's voice was strained, guilty. He used to brag about having a backup wife. Said you were perfect for the image he needed. Smart enough to impress people but too boring to leave him. Too grateful to have someone like him to ever cause problems. Each word confirmed what I'd already figured out, but hearing it from someone else still stung. He said boring women were perfect for marriage because they'd never have options. They'd always be loyal because who else would want them? Jake continued. I should have told you at the wedding. Hell, I should have told you at the engagement party. But bro code and all that toxic garbage. Why tell me now? Because I heard what he did to you. What he said at that wedding. And I realized my silence made me complicit. You didn't deserve any of it. Your revenge wasn't cruelty. It was just returning the same level of respect he'd shown you. Thank you, I said quietly. For telling me. There's more. He's been calling old friends, trying to borrow money, looking for job connections. Everyone's avoiding him. He did this to himself, but he still blames you. Says you destroyed his life over a joke. A joke. 4 years of marriage reduced to a punchline and he still called it a joke. Saturday afternoon I attended a reading at Phoenix Books, our local independent bookstore. The author was discussing historical fiction, weaving together stories of forgotten women who'd changed history from the shadows. I sat in the back row, notebook in hand, genuinely absorbed. Excellent question, the author said to someone in the front. About the agency of women who seemed powerless. Professor Shaw, would you like to address that from a historical perspective? A man stood, tall, early 40s, salt and pepper beard, wearing a tweedy jacket that should have looked pretentious but somehow didn't. His answer was thoughtful, nuanced, bringing in examples from his own research. I found myself leaning forward, captured by his perspective. After the reading, I was browsing the history section when a voice beside me said, "You were taking serious notes back there. Research or interest?" Professor Shaw stood there holding a stack of books that suggested he was a regular customer. Both, I admitted. I teach English, but I'm always looking for historical connections to make literature more relevant. His face lit up. Cross-disciplinary approach. Brilliant. I'm Daniel, by the way. Daniel Shaw. Willow Turner. We talked for 20 minutes about books, teaching, the challenges of making history matter to modern students. He listened intently, asked follow-up questions, laughed at my observation about teenagers thinking everything before 2010 was basically the Stone Age. Would you maybe want to continue this over coffee? He asked. I know a place that makes the best maple lattes in Vermont. I'd like that. If this story of sweet revenge had you cheering for Willow, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Willow left the wedding ring on Asher's pillow with that devastating note, knowing he'd wake up to a completely dismantled life. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.